Hi guys, and welcome to the next episode of the Gibson Show. My name is Gibson, your host, and today I am joined by quite possibly the most professionally dressed man in all of Siege, and that includes the on-screen talent, the one and only Callout. Callout, welcome in, and how you doing?
Good, thank you for having me. Just looking forward to get into it. Let's have a good conversation here.
We've been trying to get this going for a long time, so it's good to finally get time to sit down with you. So I think to give the viewers some color, you and I met in person for the first time in Charlotte just after the major final, and we were like, right, we're going to get this chat done. We're gonna do it, and then life gets in the way. That's all you gotta say, right? So
been trying to do this for months now. We finally got it done. So
well, look, it's probably for the best because we're getting to do it right now on the build up to SI. So all in all, it's a good time. We can look back at this interview if you guys win the whole thing and be like, yep. We set it in stone then. That's when it happened.
Yeah.
So, first off, I think I'm going to give you congratulations. Congratulations on getting the coaching job for SSG. I know that when, as a coach, you see an org pull out, it can be very difficult as to know what the next steps are. So, congratulations to you on getting that job, and hopefully you can get a lot of success.
That's the goal.
So, I think the best place to start every single story is at the start. And you're one of the coaches who have gotten into the coaching where you began as a player. So take us back to the very start of your journey in Siege. Were you a day one console player? Did you get stuck right in on PC? Like, how did you get into the game?
So, actually, when the game first came out back in 2015, I got it like that year for Christmas, basically. So I started playing literally like when it came out. All I had to do was play the beta, but I was, year one player. So played on console, 15 years old, just cranking. I'll just literally go to school, go to football practice, come back, play ranked till like 2 a.m. every day, and then that was it. And then, that eventually kind of, built up. They had like game battles and stuff back then, and kind of got the competitive itch for it because I've always been a competitive person. And then, so we just started basically doing game battles, go fours, things of that sort, and started cranking from there. And that's where I met Forrest at too, actually, back in 2016. So we've been on a team since then. It's kind of crazy. So,
and whenever you started playing the game, did you see yourself in 2023 still being involved in the competitive scene on the break of 2024? Like, when you're 15 years old, and especially at that time when esports was still kind of, CSGO was really the only competitive esport out there. You had your FaZe Clan trips on COD and stuff like that, but it was kind of just CSGO. Did you know from day one with Siege that this was the game that you wanted to play, or were there other distractions around that time?
Oh, when I was that age, I mean, I didn't have any like thought in my head going pro. So I want to play. I thought I was gonna be like an NFL player at the time. Like I thought I was gonna go play professional football. So it was like that was my focus. I just loved Siege. So it was like, and I got pretty good at it, right? But then, you know, towards like the end of high school, my grades weren't fully there, and I wasn't like, I didn't get any like big offers for college football. I didn't have anything past like, a two school that offered me or want me to play there. So I kind of realized, that wasn't really what going to happen. And then towards the very tail end of that, I got into, kind of like PC playing, and then I got into Challenger League. And then at that point, I was like, I'm just going to focus on this and then see where I can take it. So I didn't actually think about becoming pro probably till I was like 17, 18. I wouldn't say until then it was, just football pretty much, and then playing Siege for fun.
And what was it like balancing life at that time? Because I know that in the US, especially if you're good at sports, there can be a lot of pressure on you from outside factors, particularly if at that time you wanted to go to play, ball in college. So how did you balance all that at the time? Like, was it just a case of you got home and Siege was kind of your escape from the pressure, or was it you're a competitor and you compete all day and you want to get home and you want to compete even more?
I didn't balance it well, I'll say that. So, basically, it was like I would go, like I said, I would wake up, I would go to school, go full practice, and like I was basically just compromising my sleep just to play video games all day. So it was pretty bad, But at that age, you can handle it. But it was probably like 5, 6 hours of sleep at most at night, and it was just literally just like school, football, Siege, on repeat, and just doing it over and over again. And then a lot of times also like, getting to school late, and then school kind of became, less in that priority as well at a certain point. It shouldn't have been, but it was. Hate to say it.
Look, it happens. I think it's at the age that you are 15, 16 too, education's boring. It's the last thing on your mind. So Football then, tell me about it. What position did you play? Like, who inspired you? What sort of team did you support? Because if you were thinking about playing in college, you must have been pretty good at that age.
I was, yeah. I mean, I'll probably think I'm a lot better than I actually was, but I was, pretty competent player, I would say. Oh, I think we got all over right there.
Yeah.
But yeah, basically I watched, the Dallas Cowboys a lot growing up. My dad was a huge Dallas Cowboys fan. I liked watching Alabama football too. And, essentially kind of just like started when I was young, sixth, seventh grade, started playing. And then I was always a lineman. So played across the entire offensive, defensive line, except for center. And then that was pretty much, my niche in a sense was just that. And then I got really good at defensive end. And that's where I actually started getting looks at was like playing defensive end quite a bit and a little bit of three tech. So
Couple of positions
people know what three tech is.
Yeah, a couple of positions that you spoke about that Cowboys fans pretty much love watching the Cowboys for at the minute. Let's be real, the offensive line and those defensive ends
Mike Parsons out in the defensive end. Yeah.
I'm a Giants fan, so all I'm going to say is when I see Cowboys schedule, they get how many sacks are they going to get? How many points are they going to put up on us? It's not even funny anymore. And do you think that the discipline that you learned at that age from the sports side of things, playing your position, studying your role, did you take any of those learnings into the competitive scene whenever you did start breaking into esports when you were 18, 19 years old?
Yeah. No, I definitely think that, I'm a product of, my coaches that have taught me, in high school, even previous esports coaches, et cetera. But like, I had a lot of really good coaches in high school, and like they, instill a lot into me. And I think that the biggest thing they instilled in me was work ethic, right? So it's like, and perseverance, because like, there were a lot of times where, I probably could just quit as a player. Like I couldn't get out of CL for a while. Like I literally played in pro league, then went to CL for a year, and still can come out late. If it wasn't for what they taught me, I don't think I would have kept going. I wouldn't be here right now.
Sure, look, there's a pretty famous player still in what's left of Challenger League in NA, Karen. We all know he's still he's still battling. So, with that, then, when you were breaking in as a pro player, Siege was obviously in a very different place. The esports scene was very different. NA was very different in how things were done. What was it like at that point? Being on that crest of a wave when you finally did get the opportunity. I think E United was the first really big roster that you were associated with. Talk me through that point of your life.
At that time I was still really immature, I think, in a sense, right? Like I think that so that opportunity I kind of blew out of proportion in a sense, especially when I first came into the league. And I was just very nervous and like everything that I did almost like when I first started playing, right? Because I was like, this is everything I always wanted, and now I'm doing it. And it's like I just had this huge like narrative built around it, right? And then that led to me not having the best first season in pro league. I was pretty bad, honestly. And then our team as well, we didn't really actually do much on United, and I think a lot of that was due to the fact that there was I could have been a better leader, I think, on that team, but also there wasn't like a real great structure within that team. Like it was probably, even out of my CL teams, I would say it's probably one of the most unprofessional teams that I've played with. And that's not because of the players or because of the coaches. I'll take a good amount of ownership of that myself. I think just because as a core group, we couldn't really, come together on the same page and actually decide what we wanted to do, right? And then that's one of the reasons for a lot of the shortcomings on that team, I believe.
And when you look back at that team and you see some of the names that played on the United, you'd Kansan, Rexon, Yeti, there was a lot of talent, right? A lot of those players have gone on to do big things. Do you have any regrets about that time, or do you feel like that molded you into the person that you are today?
I definitely don't regret it. If I could go back and do it differently, I'd definitely do it differently. I think, especially in the way that I don't want my cameras blurry, by the way. I apologize for that. Whatever's wrong with that. But I'll definitely go back and do it differently. I think knowing what I know now and kind of being the person I am now, I wouldn't have acted the way I acted in a lot of those scenarios. But yeah, I don't regret it, but I would definitely do it differently if I could go back and do it, I would say.
Yeah. But look, I think the big thing is when you look back on decisions that you made in your life and the way you behaved, it's important to remember that they are molding. They do shape you to be the person that you've become today. And, off the back of that and the decisions that you made from that point on, it led to you being one of the, how would I put it, the most respected coaches inside of all competitive Siege. So you never know. If you went back and changed some things, you might not be where you are today. And it's important that you always remember that. So obviously the E United thing didn't go as planned. You just kind of went back to Ape after that. And I want to talk about when you decided to make that next step. So
Mhm.
You'd been a player, you'd been a high school footballer, you'd been a leader as opposed in your team, and you decided to get into coaching. What drove that decision? Was it a case where you didn't get the offers that you wanted at the time, or the coaching offer was something that you always wanted to get into? How did you step into coaching?
So after United, actually, so I always talked with Cash Flow, like the owner of DG, and me and him always kind of this relationship where we'd like talk about like philosophy and just other things like that, and we had a lot in common. And so, I got to know him pretty well. Then after I got dropped from United, he originally wanted to become coach for DG, and then I told him right before we actually went ahead and solidified that deal or whatever it was, like I didn't think I could give him my full capacity to coach at that time because I still wanted to play. So I told him I'm gonna take a year to play and see if I can get back into the league as a player, and then if not, we'll see where it is at that point. And then it ended up working out where they decided get rid of Easley or part ways. I don't know exactly how that thing worked out. And then right after Challenge League ended, I didn't make Pro League, so kind of had that conversation again. And we're like, okay, it's time. Let's go ahead and do this. And then that's when I came on Coach Astralis.
And I want to talk about the fit then. From that point, you became a coach. Players wear jerseys. They're
Yeah.
very casual. They dress for casual, unless you get some people, like your Virtues or your Spoits, who like to dress really well compared to the rest of the pool.
Mm-hmm.
You obviously worked with Meepy. He was, I think, an analyst with you. You had some crossover for a little while at United, if
Yeah.
I'm not wrong. And he's probably the only other coach that I can think of that rivals you when it comes to dressing for the occasion. Why the suit? Is that something that maybe your parents instilled in you about dressing for work, or is that just something you wanted to do to put that front face on? Like, what's the thought behind dressing as well as you do on stage?
So it started as kind of like a joke at first. Where on Ape, because all those guys knew what I was doing, like when I was traveling with the Astralis team and stuff like that. Where I told them like, hey, listen, like if I get this my first game on stage, I'll wear a suit. Is what we told him. And then like I told Forceful that he was my coach at the time, and he's like, yeah, you got to wear the suit now. So I got that, and the first day I did it, I just wore the dress shirt and the pants and such. And then at that point, it's like, all right, we're just gonna keep this thing going. And I like it. So we just kept it going, and then kept building on it from there.
Look, I love it. Honestly, it's one of the things that when, as a viewer in competitive Siege, and you're trying to get to know teams, you're like, oh, that's the team with the coach that dresses in a suit. And obviously, Meepy was the same. He took that same kind of approach. And did you learn anything from the likes of Meepy or
Yeah.
when you were in United about being a coach? Because I want to know more about your philosophy when it comes to coaching.
Yeah. Meepy, I think, was really good at what he did. I think I have a lot of respect for him, honestly. I think that he's a great, support staff, especially when he worked with me. I don't really have much sample size outside of that, but
Mm-hmm.
he's really, really intelligent guy. And, he was very professional in the way that he acted. So, I definitely learned some things from him, especially I didn't work with him a lot though. So, I couldn't really get that close to him or learn that much from him. But from the time that I was there, it was definitely a positive experience. And, Execration, Forceful, those two guys probably gave me quite a bit of I guess background in terms of seeing what a coach should like kind of do and like kind of how they should act in a sense. And, I kind of took that with my own, philosophy and what I've talked to other people about, Taylor Johnson, cash flow, and then kind of just develop my own philosophy, right? Where it's like, I guess the coaching philosophy that I have, right? Where it's like kind of like an extreme ownership thing, where it's like I'm a very authoritative person within the team, where it's like, I everyone has a say, but at the end of the day, it goes through me because I'm taking responsibility if we win or lose at the end of the day, right? So I always tell the players that too. Like if we win or we lose, it's not your fault, it's my fault always, right? So
Mm-hmm.
by taking that responsibility, I kind of, also make sure that, things are done a certain way in a sense, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I would say that, Meepy, X, Forceful, all those guys had a pretty big impact on what I currently do and how I coach.
And how do you quantify your success as a coach? Is it individual player development? Is it team development as success? Like for you, what's the most important thing when you're developing a team?
Okay. I guess I'll split that into kind of two. So you're asking what I quantify as success. I would say, I always say this all the time. Like, people like talk about potential and stuff like that. I think the only thing that really matters in esports, and even though it sucks, and this isn't what I personally believe, is the results at the end of the day. Like, if you win as a team, that's all that matters at the end of the day, is if you're doing well, right? Like, everything else is just fluff, in my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
And all those things are great too, like player development, personal development. Those are all great things, but at the end of the day, you got to be performing as a team, or you're not going to be a team anymore, right? And
Mm-hmm.
then the second part to that, when you're asking what I, think is important, I think the most important thing is culture in a team. So I think that like no matter what the meta is, no matter what players you have, no matter who the coaching staff is, if you have a strong foundational culture and standards established, that you're going to have a team that's competitive no matter what. And I think that's one thing we did a very good job of carrying over from Astralis to this team
Mhm.
was that culture. And it doesn't really matter, who the players are. Just we have those standards, we have that culture. This is what SSG is. This is what Astralis was, and there is no ifs, ands, or buts about it.
Yeah, we'll talk about SSG a lot more later on, but I want to talk about Astralis now because I think
Mm-hmm.
that was a big time for you, for the community really getting to know you. And I feel like that roster was on a massive upward trajectory. You looked at, you got to the major final in Charlotte where Canadian rolled back the years. You sat back watching that one,
Mm-hmm.
and I want to talk about that in a little bit in particular about that final. But
Man.
you looked at the players that you had. You'd Forrest, you'd Shuttle, you'd Jane. I know, yeah, like that roster, iconic. That iconic play that he made on Basement.
Oh yeah.
Like that roster had so much potential. You had nothing but, I think, faces is the right way to put it. All the players were stars in their own right as far as
Yeah.
their social media, their confidence. What was it like in the moment being in that Astralis team and feeling like you could win anything?
It was good, right? Like I think that that was a big change for everybody on that team, myself included. There was a lot of kind of starting out on Astralis.
Mhm.
Like I said, I kind of came with a lot of things like where it was like we're gonna do this, this, and this now. And when I first got there, obviously there was a lot of pushback on that, I think. And then after stage one, we started doing a lot of that stuff and we started winning, and it was a lot easier at that point to kind of actually establish that culture. And then really after that, that's where kind of that whole culture thing took off, was after stage one. We came together as a team, everybody had their input on it, and everybody agreed to this core set of things that we had. And after that, it was kind of just we were cranking for a bit, right? And then we went to the major and did pretty good.
Yeah.
Um, Obviously, lost border somehow. I don't know how that
Yeah.
happened. I'm gonna think about border forever on that final. Man, that was ridiculous.
Yeah.
Should never have lost that map. Um, and then yeah, kind of just going on about that, right? There was eventually the roster change for DP. We found Spiff, young dude, fit the culture perfectly. He was very open to learning, and then kind of just kept the train of chugging to invite, and then was able to do what we did there. It's pretty good.
I remember being in the crowd and just chants of Spiff don't whiff going over and over again. Was it difficult at any point managing that roster? And I'm going to say this in a compliment to the guys. Like I said, they're big personalities, right? Iconic, Shuttle, Forrest, they're all big personalities. And
Mm.
as we say, stars shine, and sometimes that can cause a problem when you have a couple of players that are, kind of stars in their own right. Was there ever any trouble with that during that time, or were the guys fully locked in and focused on achieving success together?
At the beginning, there definitely was a little bit. I think especially with I'm not gonna get too deep into this. I'm not gonna
Mm-hmm.
air out any dirty laundry to anybody, but like, and it wasn't even that bad to preface that. But like, there was a little bit between a couple of the guys. I think when Forrest especially first came on, he was like literally just dominating everybody in North America. And like everybody's like, because Forrest before that was kind of like a meme. A lot of people don't like know it unless you're like a player or
Mm-hmm.
like a coach in the scene. But like everyone thought that Forrest was bad, like, and it was just crazy. And then like we brought Forrest on, and then Forrest comes out and dominates, right? And then the guys on the team were like, "What the fuck is going on here?" Right, for a little bit, and then after that, they were like, it kind of just we all kind of gelled together, and then everyone started, maturing a bit, I think, and growing together, right? We
Mm-hmm.
had just really good performance coaches as well. Taylor Johnson had a big influence, I think, in our team culture. And, as the guys kind of got more mature, the more that we kind of just gelled into that unit where it's like we're here together, we're here to win for each other, right? Compared to just, I want to be the star. That kind
Yeah.
of faded out after a couple weeks, I would say.
Yeah, I think all I've ever known Forrest as a competitor. Like I've always loved watching him play. He's
Yeah.
nuts. As I said, he was one of the guys that I got to talk to a lot. My favorite
Mhm.
moment of that major was in the bar in the after that final, and it was just iconic. And Forrest talking to me, saying, "He's that guy. No, he's that guy. No, he's that guy." And I was like,
It's too
"Guys,
funny.
you both are." But the fact that they were able to put on such a positive face, and even you were very positive that night after having a heartbreaking loss, is a credit to you and the
Mhm.
culture that you guys built, where it was, you could have sat, you could have sobbed and got depressed, but no, you guys kind of picked up and got focused again really quickly. I want to talk about the final though, right? So being a
Oh, yeah.
coach is really tough because once the game starts, all you have is that one timeout every single map.
Yeah.
You know, you can't really change a lot at the time without taking a timeout. When you see Canadian getting hyped, I think this is the best way to put it. Any team Canadian's on, once you see him hit high energy, you know that momentum's massively in their favor. Did you feel like once he started to build confidence after that second map that you were in a little bit of trouble?
I didn't think that until we went to bank. So in that series right there, so you know, border, we should have won border. That was the map we were playing for, right? Like that was our best map at the time, and then we just literally just threw it because I think we were shaking a little bit. If I'm keeping it frank, there was a little bit of nerves going on. I wasn't really concerned about like the hype or anything like that at all until the only thing I was concerned about was going to bank. Like that was the one map we knew if we had to go to bank that like it may get a little dicey. And then outside of that, I think we had an opportunity to win every map that we played. I was pretty confident in every map, and then it came to bank, and I was like, that's the first time that thought ever came to my head where it's like, we knew going into that series, bank was one of our, more shaky maps. It was a very hit or miss map for us. We only did good against a certain play style in that. And we knew it could be trouble for us going into DC. But before that, I didn't really care about him getting hyped. It was just let him do his thing type deal, right? Like we're here to crank as well.
Well, I think there was a great story going on that whole final with Iconic and just Iconic and Canadian back and forth over and over again. And safe to say, Iconic's never lost that. No matter where he is, he still has the big personality when he's on stage. Yeah. But after that, you had SI, but there was a little bit of disappointment then. Obviously, Astralis made the decision that they were going to pull out of Siege.
Yeah.
Was that a surprise to you? Like, how much of a surprise was that to you at the time, if you can speak about it?
So, I knew all about like the Astralis because like I was also in the general manager role in that team, so that was privy to pretty much all like the information when it came to financials and stuff like that. And I knew that Astralis wasn't. They were very particular about how they spent their money and all that. So I knew that if we didn't do well, I thought they were going to drop us. I thought after us getting top 4, we were good to go for the next year, though, honestly. I wasn't expecting that. I was thinking, like, going to that event, it's like if we did bad, I thought we were going to get dropped because, I don't think they would see a reason to keep us around. But I thought after getting, top 4, at least making main stage, that they'd keep us around for another year. And they didn't end up doing that. Because we were prepared to, like, me and Cash were talking about, like, what the contracts are going to look like next year, like, all that kind of stuff. Like, we were going through all that, like, on what players we wanted to keep, what players we want to let go, and, like, having that conversation. So I was definitely expecting if we had a good showing to keep the team. But it's not the way it worked out.
Yeah,
it's kind of a surprise, honestly.
I think for me, even just that coming out of the blue as a fan and a caster, it was like, what's going on? Because Whippet and I were, we had high hopes for that Astralis roster. We spoke about it pre-show. We both feel like that roster could have achieved a lot more if you were given the time to continue to develop. So then after that, you have the breakup. Once you realize that no org was either willing to pick up the whole roster and buy that space or drop their current roster and pick you guys up. What did that feel like for you? Because you'd been together, you in particular had been with Forest for a long, long time. Like, was there fear at that point, or did that drive you on that you says, right, that project done, on to the next chapter?
I did everything that I could at first to keep the team together. So, like, I was, like, going out and messaging other organizations. Like, I think I talked to, like, 5 or 6 different organizations about potentially picking up our whole roster. And then we ended up getting one offer. But the salary wouldn't match what we, would need. It wasn't even, like, it wasn't, like, a necessary of greed. It was literally, like, not enough for us to be full-time on it. Like, it was a very low salary that we got offered for one org to stay together. And we were like, okay, we can't do that. And at that point, it was kind of on to the next, right? Like, I had 3 teams talk to me about coming coaching for them in NAL, and I had 2 solid offers, one of them being SSG. I won't say the other 2 because I don't want to, expose anything. But and with SSG, the difference between the other 2 offers and SSG was, with SSG, I could bring on 2 of my players in Mango. So it was like, at that point, we're looking at doing that, and it was Forrest and Jack. I'll try to get Dave as well with us, but he got offered a lot more money for M80. So, he decided to do that for his own reasons. And then, got Jack, got Brox, and Mango, and then went over to SSG and started cranking over there. I think the biggest thing that I was kind of like upset about is not being able to bring Spiff with us. Because, like, I literally just started with that kid. And, like, he had so much progress in, like, such a short period of time. Like, he's like Ashen, where it's like, he's like just like a glue ball. And he's like made of glue. Like I throw things at him and he would remember everything. It was crazy. Like he progressed so fast in that short period of time. Like, he did great. So like I was pretty upset about that. Also, it obviously sucked not to have Shuttle anymore. I'd love to have another year with Shuttle. Dave as well, right? But it's not the way it works out. So we were able to kind of scrap together, the system. We were able to get Forrest, Jack, and then me and Mango. So we got a good majority of the team. Then went on SSG and started getting it done.
So with SSG going through that little dismantling of the roster that they had for so long as well, because you came in, they were making some changes there as well. Was the ability to mold your own roster again the driving factor beside your decision to go to SSG? Or would you, because I'm sure that the other offers were for rosters, the rosters were set, they wanted you to come in and start coaching. Was it the fact that you could put your own twist on it from the start one of the factors that really drove you to SSG?
Definitely. Like I told you, like, this is like just a part of who I am. Like when I go onto a team, like I have a very, very high standard that I expect people to be held to, right? And then like going onto a preset roster, that's a lot harder to establish than being able to, bring some people on who are already part of that culture, or being able to change people around who would fit into that a lot more. Going onto a team where it's like they already have 5 players there, it's okay, fellas, we're throwing everything out that you're doing right now, and we're doing this. It's going to just be a shit show trying to do that, especially 3 weeks leading into NL, right? And then I also knew SSG was a very, just supportive organization. No one's ever said anything bad about that org before. They're really good. They're honestly the best org I've ever been with. And, that paired with being able to, bring some fellas on with me, that kind of just sealed the deal for it.
And when you joined, and, Ashen's there already, you've got Hot and Cold, who's another person who's been in the scene for years and years. You've got Fultz in there too. How was that initial bonding session? Was there any nerves going into that new environment? Like, were any of the players nervous about it? Or was it a case of you as the coach, you sat them down on day one and said, right, here's the objective and here's how we're going to win together?
I will say that Fultz and Hot and Cold shocked me a lot. That was one of my biggest fears with them too, because I didn't know them very well. I've never really had a conversation with them, is that they'd be very apprehensive to, what I'm trying to teach them. I thought that was going to be a very hard task because, they're veterans. Matt's been playing the game since it came out. He's been a pro since year one. And then Fultz has, won a world championship. He's been a pro for quite a while as well, right? So it's like, I thought going in there would be a lot harder for me to actually get done what I needed to get done. But, to my surprise, and it was a pleasant surprise, they were like, okay, like we're going to do, we need to do, like we're here to learn. And then like, that's how it was. Now, obviously, changing some of those behaviors they had from playing the game as long as they did, that was a little bit harder, but they were never apprehensive to learn. They never said like, I'm not going to learn this. Like they were like, okay, I'm going to try to learn this. And then the roadblock was, actually changing habits they built on for years, right? And that was like the hard part, but it was never a task of like trying to get them to listen. They always listened and they kept their ears open and kept trying to learn. So it was nice.
Probably one of the reasons why they've had such a long career as well. Players who don't listen or who are troublesome, they either bounce around a lot or they're out. So I think that definitely helped. But
exactly,
with all the change for you and your personal circumstances with, switching from Astralis to SSG, we also went through the earthquake shift that was Blast coming in and the changing of the whole competitive, schedule. We lost a stage. Yes, we got Gamers 8 to kind of fill in the summer, but all in all, it was a massive period of change for the scene. Was that more difficult or less difficult for you when it came to changing those habits? Because I know that in NAL in particular, a lot of teams got thrown in the deep end very quickly with 2-3 games on your very first play day, done very quickly, particularly in stage 1. Like, how was that for you as a coach, getting used to that shift in environment? Because that changes your plans a lot too, I'm assuming.
Yeah. Let me think how to answer that. So, kind of in the beginning, right there, I would say, when it was like, like you said, like just an ass blaster of a schedule, like we're playing a ton of games in a very short period of time. Like, it was a bit different how we prepped, I will say. So, I'd say one of the biggest roadblocks of that was getting the guys to retain prep that me and May were giving them and being able to apply it. And that was definitely a big roadblock as well because they weren't used to the amount of prep that we do from the other teams because, we do quite a bit. Mango does a ton, and then like we'll do a lot of, I'm not going to get into it, we do quite a high level of stuff. And then that was kind of that at the beginning, but, they kind of caught onto it, fast enough to where we made it to top 3 and then made it to that major. And then at the major, it was a bit of a different story. It was a little bit of, some growing pains finally started to show there.
Yeah, and it's one of those ones that at least most orgs were in the same position. You know, every region had to go through the same trials and tribulations with that. You know, EU splitting into 2 regions, Brazil had the change. So I think the only positive is that it wasn't just one region in particular that had to deal with it. Everybody had to go through it together.
Oh, definitely, yeah.
So this is where I wanna talk about, you know, that stage in particular. One of the things that I picked up on, and I don't know if you've ever spoken to Jack about it, Jane, I know. How much water does that kid drink during a competitive game? I remember watching one playdate, and he started off and there was one empty water bottle beside him, and by the end of the show, there was like 12 bottles sitting empty beside him on the broadcast.
He stays hydrated. He drinks I think he drinks probably like a gallon a day at minimum, and for his size, it's quite a bit.
Yeah, and that's actually a good transition because you spoke about his size. We saw a photo that was put up just before the last major. SSG said, you know, the most athletic team inside of Siege. How much? How much has that culture got in as well? Because, you know, obviously you look great. You know, you've made a lot of great changes since we've met. You look fantastic. You know, the guys, you can tell that they enjoy themselves in the gym. How much to you does being physically fit, eating well, sleeping well, you know, looking after yourself, how important do you put that to the players?
I mean, we all have massive importance. I think all the players value that a lot. That isn't really just a me thing. That's kind of like a whole. We talk about that culture. That's the whole team right there. Or it's like, you know, we all take it very, you know, serious, right? Where it's like how healthy we are. You know, we talk about all kinds of like different like optimizations. Like we talk about like when to drink caffeine, when not drink caffeine. You know, when you should be eating to avoid lethargy, how much water you should be drinking. You know, like electrolyte consumption, like you know, how to sleep, you know, how to exercise, all that kind of stuff, right? So I mean, when it comes to performance, like, you know, I think that I'm pretty confident in saying that we probably focus more on performance factors than any other team right now in any sport. I think like we go really heavy into it. And we also have a really awesome current performance coach, Vertex, who like, you know, he does a really good job for that as well. Like he's an actual, you know, psychology, he has a degree, like, and what he does, and then he teaches us a lot about that. And then a lot of own research between our general manager, myself, and then, you know, some of the guys will focus a lot more on the physical side, but we focus a lot on that, and it's had a definite positive impact for us.
I think it's you just got to look across the Siege, you know, landscape. Players who have taken a big approach to their physical and mental well-being, their performance has improved massively. And I think again, it's something that I'm glad that a lot of teams are starting to pick up on, because as a coach, as a player, it's not a long career that you got in esports. It can be very, very stressful. You know, players are going into one stage not knowing if, you know, if things go wrong, you know, are the org thinking of making changes?
Exactly.
So it's really important that you as a coach do help them through that. And, you know, you look at the team that you have, I think you spoke a few times about the background staff that you have. How good's your relationship with the players? Like how often do you guys meet separately to the players to talk about how you guys can do your jobs better?
We always have like we have an open channel of feedback, so we have like this like tenet where it's like you talk about the standards, we have this thing called like be for real. So it's like anytime like, you know, you think somebody should be doing something else, like we make it like a safe environment to tell each other. Like if they think I'm fucking something up or I think they're fucking something up, we just tell each other like, hey, listen, like we could doing this better. So we do have a very open lane of communication in that sense. When it comes to relationship between me and the players, like I try to make sure I keep a separation with them, if that makes sense. Where it's like, you know, I love my players and like I'll do anything for them, but I don't try to become friends with them. Like I need to make sure that there's that distinct separation between a player to player relationship and a player to coach relationship. I think that's something very important to have, right? Because there needs to be like, I don't think I can be Fultz's best friend and also be the best coach I can be to him, right? That can't happen, I don't think. So that's one thing that kind of sucks a little bit, I will say, because I would like to be friends with some of these guys a lot more than I am, but it's like purposely get distance myself a little bit, and it kind of, you know, it's kind of like the worst part about coaching, I would say.
I think it's any leadership role in particular. It's very difficult to be friends with people and then not have a bias. You know, like that's the reason why.
Yeah.
And was that hard for you with Forrest then? Because I know that you and Forrest have been together since day one as teammates. Like, was it difficult making that transition from Forrest's teammate to Forrest's coach?
It was at first a little bit, and then like surprisingly, like Forrest is like not. I'm not gonna say surprisingly because Forrest he's a beast, so I'm not gonna. I'll cut that out. Not like he transitioned to that very well. Where it's like right now, like you know, I can be harder on Forrest and most other players, and he understands why, because he knows me so well, right? Where it's like I can literally like tell Forrest like, hey, listen, like I'll just rip him up sometimes. Like, I'll be like, hey, listen, like you messed this up, you messed this up, you messed this up. Like, what are you doing here? And it's like he understands it, he gets it. He's like, okay, like that's me doing that as my job, and he doesn't get upset about it. So I think it's actually been a more positive thing than a negative thing. So us having that prior relationship, I think that kind of made it a bit better for me to be his coach. It made us a bit stronger with that sense where it's like, we have a mutual understanding where it's like we're here to win, and then I can say things without having to hold anything back, and he gets it.
So speaking of winning, then we've got the biggest event in the Siege calendar right around the corner. Six Invitational in Brazil. I know that we had a chat. You're excited about traveling out to that part of the world. I will never ask a coach or a player what their game plan is because it's not fair.
Yeah.
It's not fair to put you in that position. But how are you preparing yourself for that change in culture? Like, we've all seen the clips of esports events in Brazil where teams from outside of the region are playing Brazilian teams, and we know that environment can be hostile, like, to say the least. And I think you got to give credit to Brazilian fans. They create a great atmosphere.
They have an actual impact on the game. Like, it's pretty cool. Yeah.
Exactly. Like, I put this up. I work the Brazil region. I love it. But not only is it going to be a hostile environment for teams from outside of the rest of the world, Brazil as a region are very, very good right now. You've got W7M who've dominated the competitive calendar so far. Liquid are never far away from a final, as are FaZe. How are you preparing your guys for walking into that gauntlet that will be an event in Brazil?
So it kind of goes back to, that out-of-game performance standard stuff, I think, where it's like, we talk a lot about, like, keeping yourself regulated, where it's like, making sure, like, this is a physical thing where it's like when you get into that, when you actually go onto that stage, it's like lowering your heart rate down to a point where it's like not through the roof. Breathing techniques, we do visualization, we do brain dump on journaling before we play, we do meditation. Like, you've probably seen Hot and Cold do it, you've probably seen the clips of him doing it where he's literally on the stage, like, doing his breathing and stuff. And like, we talk about these techniques, so anytime the guys are feeling that way on the stage, they know how to regulate themselves. And then prior to the game, won't give our exact routine away, but we have a routine helps get that mind and that body into the proper, state to where, we're as calm as possible going to that situation. So we're going to keep doing what we do with that, and, just keep talking about it, make sure that standard doesn't fall at all. And then I think we should be in a fine position for that.
Right, I'm curious now, because you brought up heart rates, and I'm involved in another esport in PUBG where at major events, they get the players to wear wristbands that monitor their heart rates. So when the players are on screen, you can see their heart rates.
Really? I never knew that. That's actually so cool.
So in clutch situations, you'll literally see the player's heart rate go from like 90 to 170 plus in these big moments.
Oh, wow.
Is that something you've ever looked at doing from a coaching standpoint? Like, have you ever...
I've never thought of that, actually. Like, actually putting the wristband on and stuff?
Yeah.
I never thought of that. That's actually a really interesting thing. I'm actually going to note that down. Hold on.
Yeah.
Give me a second.
It's... while you note that down, as a viewer, it's crazy seeing, the differences in even teammates' heart rates in certain scenarios. Like, I remember watching in the PUBG Global Championships, the heart rates of the team that won the event. They got in a gunfight with their closest rival and beat them. And you just saw those heart rates rocket up. And then
that's too cool.
You've always got that one guy whose heart rate's just sitting at like 60, 70, like, all this crazy stuff going on, but they're cool. So, do you think that would be a cool thing, A, for the viewers in Siege, but even more so for coaches to understand your players better?
I definitely think it would be. So, like, we actually just did an exercise last week where we were talking about, like, trying to identify each person's optimal regulated state, as we call it. So, like, what I mean regulated state is heart rate. So, like, where they're not, basically how that parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous system is, like, reacting to the players. And it was all subjective and how we did it based on what they said and based on what we noticed. So it was kind of like us just coming together, like, making an approximation of what we thought it would be, right? And then with what you just said, though, I'm going to talk to Vertex about that. That could actually be a really good tool where we could, like, actually, see that, and then we could identify kind of, like, who's getting too excited, who's not, all that, and then we could actually make adjustments based off of that. That's actually a really good idea. So I think that'd be an awesome tool to answer your question. I've never thought of that. So thank you. That's pretty cool.
It's something. It's something you might be able to get SSG to gift the players a couple of smartwatches or something.
Oh yeah.
But We've spoken about the players' heart rates. What about you? So, as a coach for you during a game, do you get emotional spikes? Is it nervous? Is it hard? Like for you, what's it like watching the guys go put into practice or not put into practice what you've been putting together?
For me, it's like I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel that. It's not as much for me. I don't think, especially as I haven't been playing, where it's like I get excited if we do what we know we should do. So if we do what we talked about and it works, I'll get excited. Um, I don't get that excited like from, just like winning, if that makes sense. I get more excited if we're executing the plan the way it should be executed. I kind of get like excited for that. But I will say, like, if we're going to a game, for example, like I'll pull up G2 at Invite. Like we had a specific game plan where those guys would bring a certain operator on defense, and on theme park, we called the timeout, and then on attack, because we went down 0-3. Going into defense, it was an operator on that side, and then we didn't take that operator going into it for our game plan. We just forgot about it. I think maybe just the lights were a little too bright for us right there, and we forgot it for a second. And like right there, like I'll definitely like feel my heart sing. I'm like, oh no, like this is it. Like I knew after we didn't take that, like I wasn't like completely giving up, but I was like, okay, we forgot this. Like that may be the end of this run, and like I kind of like just kind of like got sad, if that makes sense. But I don't really get like the players do because I'm not in it. I don't really get extremely high heart rate like that or anything. I don't think that's like, as applicable. Just I'm not in the server with them, right? I'm kind of standing behind, a little bit detached.
Yeah. And your only tool that you have as a coach is that timeout. And we all know that timeouts can be precious. We've seen it time and time again where one well-timed timeout from a coach, usually, I don't know if it's just me as a caster, but usually after a timeout, the team that calls it nearly always wins that next round. And there's a couple of things that as a caster and a viewer that really bugs me. One of them is the 6-1 down timeouts where you're like, why are you taking the timeout now? It's, the game's pretty much over unless you've given unless you're giving a speech of all time to the players. It's probably done. Then you've got another coach like Twister who likes to take his timeouts really early. Even if they're winning 2-1, he might take that timeout. For you, what are the triggers and that make you want to take a timeout? And have you ever taken a timeout just to reiterate the good job that your team is doing, or is it usually I've seen something that we need to fix or remind people what was working?
Anytime I take a timeout, it's to fix rounds in the future. So like the way that we do our system, and I don't think you're going to get any actual information on this. So I'll just give it to you. Is like I have Forrest call the attack, I have Fultz call the defense. So I either talk to one of those two based on what side we're on, and then I give them all the information. It's their job. That's why you have the notepads you've seen. They note it down, and then I can talk like 3 or 4 rounds in advance. So like, and the triggers for that and when I call it is usually if one, God, I can't say about. I'll just say this: if the game narrative dictates that we need to change something, I'll call a timeout. If that makes sense. And go back to that 6-1 timeout thing. Just a quick thought on that because I just thought about that. I've actually went through a game before not calling a entire timeout when we're losing, and like the reason for that is like whenever you start a side, the way that I deem it is like if you go past that 3rd round mark where there's only 2 rounds left in that half, there's no point calling a timeout. So if, for example, we're on the attack side on bank, we'll say that, and then we're down 1-2, right? But in all 3 of those rounds, including the one that we won, we had an advantage in that the players just misplayed it to a point where it's like I can't correct as a coach, where it's like, they did the right push, they made the right call, and they just lost their gunfights at the end when they try to trade off. I can't fix that with a timeout, right? I can only fix what our decision making is. So even if we go down now at that point 1-3, and then it's 1-4, whatever, I'm not going to call a timeout at that point because there's 2 rounds left in that half. I don't see it as a time to call a timeout. So it may not be until I see that first round of that next half till I'll call that timeout to make an adjustment. Then that might be a very late timeout. That's just like context to why coaches do that sometimes. Other coaches probably think the same way in a sense.
And during those timeouts, I can't remember if it was SI or if it was Jönköping, but they allowed remember they had the live listens in, so
that
the
was
view.
SI.
Yeah, that was SI. What was it like as a coach knowing that all the viewers could hear everything you were saying? Because again, we had some great moments. It gave viewers a better, better way to learn about these coaches. You had the old coach of SSG before you was very calm. Didn't get very animated in his talks. Like, look, you know what we're doing. You had Meepy, that Meepy timeout that Rogue took. A lot of people remember. What was it like for you knowing that the viewers could hear every single word that you said? And did the coaches like it, or was it something you were against?
I loved it to prep against other coaches. I went
Hmm.
back and watched every coach's timeout that we were going to play against and listened
Hmm.
to what they said. And then after that, like, I literally just counted. I knew exactly what they were going to call in their timeouts after that,
Yeah.
like, for the most part. Like, I knew what they thought in their timeouts. So it gave me a ton of good information. Then when I was doing, I talked really quiet, trying to make sure they couldn't hear me. But, like,
Hmm.
people probably still didn't hear me.
Hmm.
So I definitely thought about it. And, like, I was trying, like, I'd pull my mic up a little bit closer and kind of talk like this a little bit. And I was like, hey, guys, listen, we're doing this, this, and this. Trying to make sure they couldn't hear me off the camera. But then I mean, I loved it hearing the other coaches. Like, I was able to get so much, me and Mango were able to get so much good information how they adapt in their timeouts that then when they would call a timeout later on, if we played them, we would know, like, okay, they're going to be thinking this, so we're going to do this. And we would basically pre-adapt what they were going to adapt with. And it worked out pretty well for us with that.
Do you think that's why they haven't been back? Because you had a couple of really good
Yeah.
good coaches like yourself who were right on the pulse with learning those things?
I don't know. I think they should bring it back. Honestly,
Yeah.
I like it. It adds more of a mental game, so it makes it fun for me.
As a viewer, I definitely did love it because, again, I am really big into studying leaders.
Hmm.
I read Alex Ferguson's autobiography, love Bill Belichick at the Patriots, just that idea of
Yeah.
how leaders lead. So for me, that was one of my favorite things, was how these coaches are adapting on the fly. And again, you had every single type of coach. You had the,
Yeah.
out there, loud, bravo, rah rah, let's get it. And then you had the calm, the cool, the collected coach. And I just
Hmm.
I just loved seeing that interaction. And I know that even though you don't hear it anymore, I've heard from talent who work at events, they love just seeing coaches' body languages, during these timeouts. Like, I know Fresh likes to keep an eye on that type of thing too. So, look,
Hmm.
I'm all for bringing that back.
Oh yeah.
The next thing on coaching I want to talk about is every player and every team has been in a position where you've laid the best laid foundations in the world, and then someone on the other team ruins those plans, whether it be
Yeah.
Breede with his crazy clutches. Let's be real, Forrest has a couple of big clutches, the iconic clutch that we spoke about on
Yep.
that we spoke about on Oregon. What's it like as a coach when you see that? Does it drive you up the wall, or is it a case of, what, hats off to that guy, they just went nuts?
In my opinion, if there's time left in the round, you have a 3v1 or more. 2v1's a little more dicey. Even a 2v1, though, I don't think you should ever lose it
Hmm.
if you play it well. I don't think there's ever a scenario that if you have time left in the round on attack or defense, you should ever lose a 3v1 or a 2v1. That should never happen. Like if you play it correctly, so there's always something to correct on that. If it's a 1v1 or something like that, and also, too, I mean, it's like, I can't get chalked because of that. I mean, if they just
Hmm.
had a clutch, like, okay, we got to go next at this point, but it does, I do get a little bit razzled about that because it's like, we obviously failed a certain fundamental in that, right? And
Hmm.
it's like, that player obviously did a really good job exposing our flaws, but at the same time, we shouldn't have had those in the first place. We should have been a little bit more smart in how we played that.
And there are some players that, for some reason, they're just better at it.
Yeah.
You can I don't think you can coach the way some of these players play these 1vx scenarios. I think it's just
Yep.
all natural feel and, just being able
Yep.
to outsmart other people.
Just intuition a
Yeah.
lot of times.
How do you prep for players like that as a coach? And at the same time, how do you think other teams prep for your guys like that? Because again, I bring it up, Forrest has had some of the biggest clutches that I've seen in the last 24 months in Siege.
Yeah. I don't really focus on players' clutch ability, if that makes sense, when I do prep. It's more so like we'll focus on what they like, their actual tendencies, how they play the round out, right? And if we get that clutch scenario at that point, like you said, just play intuition, decision making, and who does what, right? You can't really, because it's always gonna be a different scenario. Every clutch is always played differently, so you can't really coach exactly how to play a clutch because it's never usually gonna be the same thing. The only thing I'll ever say is like, we're trying to clutch, maintain initiative. That's all I'll say. And it's like, outside of that, you can't really do much, right? And then so I don't really wouldn't say we prep too much for it. It's more so one of those things where it's like we don't try to build a narrative around it. Where it's like me and Mango won't try to like tell the players like, oh shit, like we're playing against Bread right now. Like
Yeah.
watch out if this guy gets in 1v3, he might crank y'all. Like we
Yeah.
try to like make it where it's like they don't worry about that at all. We like to say it's like we're playing against gray faces at this point. Like it's gray face 1 through 5. And then that way the players don't have some like, narrative built around, oh my, like it's Shiko, it's Bread, like, I could get shit on right here. It's more so like, no, that's just another player. We're going to play against him right now. We're going to go get it done, right? And that's how we like to do it. So when we do prep, it's like, this is our plan. This is what we're going to do. It doesn't matter who we're doing it against. We're just going to go do it type deal. And that's
Yeah.
how we like to focus on it.
Are there any players as a coach that you've ever been worried about facing, or teams that you've worried about? Because obviously, again, there's nobody in competitive Siege that doesn't think they can win every single game they play.
Yeah.
The minute you don't think you can win is probably the minute that you should walk out the door. But
Yeah.
have there been times when you've had a bit of worry, or without even naming players that you've coached, has there been players who've been worried about opponents that they've been coming up against?
Yeah, I mean, I'd be lying if I said I didn't, right? Like, I think that, especially in the beginning, when I first started coaching, I was pretty much worried about every match we went into, right? Because it was like, that was kind of like my, proving ground in the sense of I knew what I was doing, right? It's like we had to win those games, like, or I was probably not going to coach for too long. So like, I was worried about every game, I think, in NAL first stage. And then outside of that, like, I always know, like you just said, I think that it's an any given Sunday, any team can beat anybody. And I think that's something we always stress to our players where it's like, we can always beat these guys, but at the same time, if we don't play well, they can always beat us, right? So I think it's one of those things where it's like, you got to be dialed no matter what. I don't really put teams on a pedestal where I think every team, if you do the right things, then you can beat them.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously some games I worry more than others where it's like, because a G2 at Invite, it's like I knew that we had to do a certain thing to beat these guys and we didn't do it and we were gonna get cranked. And then, so little things like that'll pop up, but it's never like, oh my, like we're playing, DZ right now, like we're gonna get cranked. We're playing, W7M, there's no chance. Like there's always that confidence going into it.
Do you prefer being the underdog or the favorite?
It doesn't really bother me too much because I don't get on Twitter or anything, so I actually don't know who the underdog or the favorite is.
Yeah.
Usually, I don't even so I never really know. But I would say I prefer probably being the underdog. I would say it's just funner to be the underdog, like because the crowd loves you more. If that makes sense. Like if you're on the stage, like you're the team is not expected to win a lot of times. I feel like, or you're the newer team or whatever it is. I feel like they love that if you start like doing well. So that's always fun.
Well, even as a caster, we will build narratives in our own heads of teams that we might never say it on broadcast, but we'll build a narrative of, what? I've seen something in this team that I think they can get success from. And two examples for me were NIP going in towards SI again, or going into that first major in Copenhagen, having casted them and being like, what? They haven't done great, but they're doing a lot of the right things. They're just not winning rounds. So we were building that narrative. They could perform well, and they got to the main stage. Another team that had an real underdog mentality was, do you remember La Vega going into that major as well?
Yeah.
Nobody gave those guys a shot of even qualifying for the event, and they made it, and it was like they built on that energy and qualified for the event because people were doubting them. And some of the players even messaged me and they were like, thanks for saying these nice things. Like, everyone's talking about what we're doing wrong. You were the only person that said this is what you were doing right. And it's just the stories, because for those guys, that might be the only time that they ever get to play, at a major event. So people need to realize that objectives, even though every team goes into an event with the objective to win, realistically, some of these teams have met their objective already by just being there, So that's
I get that.
So I want to do one bit of quick fire questions with you before we talk a bit more about behind the scenes. And again, you don't have to answer any of these if you don't want to.
Heard.
But basically, I'm going to ask you questions, and I want you to tell me which of your former teammates or players or coaches that you've worked for are most likely to do that thing. So, for example, if I were to say...
This will be ridiculous, I already know.
So if I were to say most likely to forget their passport on the away day event.
Shuttle.
Why did I think Shuttle too?
Because he actually did it. He actually did it on the way to Berlin, so I'll just say Shuttle. Yeah.
Most likely to sleep in for a scrim.
DP, I would say.
Yeah?
DP Fire.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Never got that vibe from him, funny enough. That's a good one. Most likely to brighten the whole team environment when people are feeling down.
Forrest.
Yeah?
Yeah, Forrest. Definitely. He's just a goofball.
If you've ever felt that you needed a spy on to keep an eye on one of your players on a night out, who would it be?
Like from one of the other players, like
if you
keep an eye out.
If you needed to keep an eye on a player on a night out, who would it have been?
It's a really good question. I'd say either Iconic or Jane. I know probably. I'd go with one of them too. I think, but put them into the espionage.
Most likely that to be someone you would class as a close friend when you're finally finished.
Probably Forrest or Mango. Yeah.
And the last one, which player is most likely to have one or too many drinks on a night out?
I can name a few. I don't know. We'll say hot and cold right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it. Still surprised it wasn't Shuttle or Forest after that night in Copenhagen or in Charlotte, but
I mean, Hot and Cold is a certified guzzer. Like he can get it done. So I'm gonna give it to him.
didn't raise no quitter, I guess. But I want to talk more about. Well, actually, I have one last question on coaching that I meant to ask earlier, but we never got into it. And it's with Siege evolving so much, over the course of the last, year and a half, particularly with time and time again, it feels like the defensive operators are having a bigger impact than the attacking operators that are being brought in. Yeah. Just your face there says the whole story. As coaches, do you guys talk to each other when it comes to all these changes? When you're playing at international events, if a team gets eliminated and you're playing against the team that they beat, are you likely to have a conversation with that coach about the team that they played? Like, how close is the bond with coaches, A, domestically, and B, internationally?
So there's a lot of, I think, paranoia built around that. I think that it is blown out of proportion quite a bit, especially with some teams and some players, where it's like they'll be very worried about other teams, talking to each other about information, especially if you scrum a certain team. I really don't care about it that much. I don't think it's that big of an issue as some people think it is. I think that, I give people a lot more credit, I think, than, I don't even say they do. I just give people a lot more credit than some people do, where it's like, I don't think they're going to be unprofessional in the sense where they're going to say, like, okay, we just scrum these guys now, this is what they do, this, and this. I don't think that a lot of teams would do that. I think that's pretty scummy to do. But in terms of us doing that, we've never asked another team for information. Like, I've never went to another coach and been like, hey, like, what does this team do, right? I've only ever asked after Berlin, where I talked to Julio after we lost, like, what he thinks our weaknesses were in a lot of our defenses and attacks, and like he gave me some advice. And like outside of that, I've never actually went to a coach where it's like, hey, we're gonna play this team. You just played them. What are they gonna do? Type deal. I don't do that usually.
Yeah, it was just a
I've never actually had a coach ask me that either.
Yeah, it was one of those curiosity questions where, particularly at international events, where if a team had been eliminated, would that team be willing to give their region the edge up?
I'm sure there are some out there.
Yeah.
There are some out there, I guarantee it. But it's like, I think that's one of those things where it's like, I don't think that's, great sportsmanship, if that makes sense. I don't think you go and give information on another team where it's like, I don't think it's very good competitive integrity from those guys.
Yeah.
So I don't personally do that.
That's good to know. So I want to talk about you more. So we spoke about, your school days, the fact that you played, football. You said that you've recently got back into rugby, so you're back in that team sports environment. When you're not involved with Siege, what does your day look like? Like, what do you like to do to relax?
Yeah. I like to do a lot of stuff physically, right? So it's like, I'll wake up usually, I'll read, I'll meditate, and then I'll either go to the gym or I'll go to jiu-jitsu usually. It's like Brazilian jiu-jitsu, I do that also. And then, after that, it's Siege for most of the day. And then, I'll like find like a show that I like watching. So I like The Last Kingdom a lot right now. I've been watching that at night sometimes. And like outside of that, right, like during the rugby season in the fall, like I play rugby. I just recently actually had a tournament I went to in Knoxville a couple weeks ago. It was a 7 tournament. It was pretty fun. Just like pretty much rugby, jiu-jitsu, weightlifting, just overall fitness, Siege. And then, I'm also pretty big into Zen Buddhism too. A lot of people don't know, but so I do a lot of like, I'll go to monasteries and stuff sometimes and, do retreats and things like that. So.
Yeah, so it's a lot of mindfulness and, being aware of your own physical body as well, then, is what you're saying, and just enjoying yourself. And
yeah, I just love it. I just love it. I love doing stuff with my body. Like, it's fun.
And how important is it to get away from Siege too? Because people talk about work-life balance being a very real thing, and in every industry, whether you're working in, just regular service industry, whether you're in sports, it's very important to draw that line between this is work and this is play. Like, are your friends and family really good for helping you get out of the Siege mindset when you don't need to be in it?
Yeah. I think that they do a pretty good job at helping me detach, and like, also too, like you said, that having that balance is very important. I think that kind of having a more structured, lifestyle helps actually create that balance and make it a distinct time where it's okay, like, this is my time off Siege. And what I've recently started doing this off season was actually like taking a full day off where I don't even think about Siege, and that's been helping me a lot, I think, with in terms of like, managing burnout and like actually, helping me de-stress a bit. So I think it's very important. I think, having that, and then having at least a day a week where it's like, okay, like I'm not even going to think about Siege. Like, we're just out there. We're just going to have fun. We're just going to, walk around, watch TV, go on a hike, go to dinner, whatever it is, right? I think that's important.
Yeah. What sort of shows do you like to watch in your spare time?
I like a lot. So I watch some anime. Recently it's been The Last Kingdom. I've been just cranking that show.
Hmm.
I like, Vikings, I like Game of Thrones. I really like the Band of Brothers of the Pacific. Like I like a lot
Hmm.
of like those like historic like war time shows or like movies. Those are kind of like I said, like any kind of time period too. It doesn't matter. Like I'll watch like I said, all the way from Vikings up to like World War II shows. Like I love that.
So it's
So any of that kind of stuff.
a lot of combat. Then there's that theme. You work in Siege. This is what you're into. You played high school football. You just love that combat element. Then is what you're saying.
I mean, it's just something I like. I don't know.
Hmm.
Yeah, I like other stuff too, right? Like I do like some, like I said, I'll watch anime sometimes. Um, a couple of them that I really like was like Baki a lot right now.
Hmm.
I've been watching that. I just recently finished a new season on that one. Outside that, I watched a little bit of Suits.
Hmm.
If you ever seen that show before, it's
Yep.
pretty good. Um, yeah, I mean, there's a little bit of a variety, but like I don't know, just some of 'em, I just like that. Ever since I was a little boy, I always wanted to like be a soldier,
Yeah.
right? So it's like I've always kind of had like that thing where I just like you know
Hmm.
like I'm very interested in like military tactics and military strategy and stuff. So I like watching shows about it.
My fiance just said to me recently last year, "What is it about boys and just liking, World War II,
Yeah,
Roman Empire stuff?" She's like, "Why are you guys so obsessed?" I was like, "I don't know. I just like it."
it's just something that you like. Yeah,
Yeah.
I can't explain it. I just
It's like,
like it.
ask me about the economy in the 90s, haven't a clue, but ask me about some battle that happened in like 18
Yeah,
something. Yeah, I'll tell you everything to do about it. Ask me about a siege.
exactly.
Ask me about a siege game from last year. I'll tell you about it. But then when it comes to friends and family, what do they think about what you do for a living? Because again, it's something that is outside the norm, and maybe it's
Yeah.
different from you with you having the aspirations when you were younger to be in competitive sports, being
Hmm.
a playing American football. Like, what was it like for your friends and family when you said, first off, I'm an esports player, and now I'm a coach?
Yeah. A lot of my family, honestly, and friends still only really fully understand it. I'd say my best friend that I grew up with, he understands. He actually plays Siege,
Hmm.
so like he, watches the esport and he plays it, so he gets it. He understands what I'm doing. But like outside of that, like most of my friends and family don't really understand it. They just like they support it, obviously, and they try to, like understand it, but they don't really get it fully. I kind of just
Hmm.
tell them like, hey, like, I'm going to Brazil for a video game tournament. They're like, oh, that's cool. Like, like they ask me questions about it, then I'll try to explain it, and then like but it's not like a full understanding. They support it though. They
Hmm.
like it, and they watch when the games are on,
Hmm.
and it's good. I don't really know a better way to explain to them what's going on because like if I try to explain to myself not knowing what's going on, I don't think I could either. But
Yeah.
it's definitely something that we're able to talk about.
Yeah. And again, I keep bringing up the fact that esports is a short career.
Yeah.
Even for players in particular, it's a very very short career, almost like NFL. Some players come in, they get one shot, they never get another one again. So when you're done with Siege, what would you like the next step to be for you? Like, would you like to get into the broadcasting side? Like, say for example, could you see yourself saying, right, I don't want to coach anymore, but I'd love to be part of the analyst desk?
Mhm.
Do you see yourself going into another title? Like, could you see yourself coaching another game? Or do you see yourself trying to coach in another industry? Like, would you like to be, get into sports coaching? Would you like to get into maybe management? Like, what would you like to be your next steps to be?
There's a couple options. Vertex, he's a performance coach I was telling you about. He works with a lot of like he works with like Dota teams and Valorant teams and stuff. And then one thing that he's been trying to teach me is like the game of Valorant. He thinks that I could transition over to that game pretty
Mm-hmm.
easily. He thinks I can coach a high level team there, so that's an option. Also doing performance coaching itself, like taking like a lot of my interests when it comes like physically and mentally, and understanding like teaching people like how to take care of themselves mentally and physically for optimal out of game performance. I think that'd be something very fun to do. I have to get a couple certifications to do that, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
so it'd take me probably a year or two to actually transition into that. But I think that'd be fun. And the last option would be like I've thought of this, depending on what's going on in the world. Like I might join the military too, as something
Mm-hmm.
that's like before I get too old to do that. It's
Yeah.
also another thing on there. Right now, though, the main focus is just Siege, right? Where it's like I'm gonna put my full focus and effort into this, and then when it's over, and I'll kind of figure it out then. I have options, but
Mm-hmm.
I haven't really honed down anything yet. I'll have to kind of see when that time comes.
And is the end goal to win an SI, or do you have something else in your mind that you would say this is kind of what I want to achieve?
I want to win a championship, yeah. Like
Mm-hmm.
I want to win an SI. Obviously, that's
Mm-hmm.
my goal. I want to do that before I do leave. If that doesn't happen, I don't think I'd say I regret it. I think that we've
Mm-hmm.
had a I think I've done a pretty good job with the players. I think I've made good relationships. I've learned a lot as a person. I think that I've been taught a lot. So I think it's been a positive experience regardless, but I do want to, before I end up leaving, I want to win something.
What about broadcasting? So the idea of being an analyst on the desk, because obviously we've seen Laxing and Foxay
Yeah.
recently. They've done a fantastic job. I think Fresh is so good at what he does, and when you give him a pro
Yeah.
player to bounce off with and really get in depth with the player's perspective, I love it. Tristan Sathis, I think most people know him as, did a great job at Gamers 8 last year, 2 years ago. Twister's done it. Do you see yourself being an on-screen analyst at any
I mean,
point?
maybe. I'm a little bit more shy than a lot of those
Mm-hmm.
guys, so it'd definitely be something I have to like kind of work myself into. I think that it'd be something I think I'd enjoy doing though, right? If I actually kind of got into it. It's
Mm-hmm.
not like something that I'm gonna like go for no matter what, but I think that if the
Mm-hmm.
opportunity comes and it's like the time comes, like get offered to do it or an opportunity, I think why not? Let's go
Mm-hmm.
see how it goes.
Even if it was, obviously you'd never want to be in that situation where your team's knocked out, but I think we could do a better job in esports of getting coaches and players involved after the team's been
Mm.
eliminated to kind of talk about
Oh yeah.
shows more. But I think we're getting towards the end of the show. I'm very conscious of taking, a lot of your time now, but if
Oh no.
it hasn't felt like a lot.
Oh no.
Um,
It's been fun. I've enjoyed it.
I want to know, for the viewers at home, obviously you're not big on socials, but because
Mhm.
you don't use it that often. But if people wanted to get to know you a little better or wanted to know more about what's going on with you or SSG, where would you tell the viewer to look?
Um, the only thing I have is Twitter, so that's I would say go on my Twitter. I don't tweet that much. I would say just the SSG account. Check that out. They're always posting new stuff about us, especially before SI. I think we're gonna have a videographer out there. We're gonna get some pretty cool videos made and stuff, and then I'll do a better job at retweeting stuff on my account too, so you can see it there.
And I suppose another one is, what's it like having Jinxie as part of SSG? I know obviously nothing to do with the esports side of things,
Yeah.
but what's that like? Because obviously he is a huge deal in his own right as just a content creator.
Oh yeah. I mean, that guy is like, he's just like, you talk about a goofball. Like I was saying that earlier, he's the definition of what a goofball is. Like that
Yeah,
guy's just insane.
yeah.
I haven't had an opportunity to talk to him at all, but like, all my players, like they love like just like watching his streams
Mm-hmm.
and they like adopt his vernacular too. Like they'll say like, "Oh, all right," like like all that kind of stuff. Like and they'll be doing like all that
Mm-hmm.
jazz. So it's like I'll kind of catch on to some of his stuff that he says. I don't watch him too often, but he's good at what he does and he's a
Mm-hmm.
funny dude. So it definitely a positive impact. There's
Mm-hmm.
nothing negative there.
Well, look at the viewership he brings.
Yeah, exactly.
Even at the weekend, the Shaiko 1v1, the numbers that brought in is just great for Siege. But
Oh yeah.
and then last one, the very very last question is about SSG. So obviously
Hmm.
you're part of that org. I have a lot of respect for the org. Obviously, and won major events in Siege. They've been a pretty big deal in other esports as well. Do you and the other coaches within SSG and other titles ever get the chance to have a talk or sit down? Because I'd be very good friends with the PUBG roster who recently went to PGC. So there's two NA guys, Roth and Sharp, that I would talk to quite a bit. Is there a relationship there with coaches in the other titles? Like, do you get the chance to sit down and talk?
That's actually something we've been trying to set up. So me and the GM we're talking about like we want to
Mm-hmm.
kind of start doing kind of like monthly performance calls with
Mm-hmm.
like all the coaches in one call where it's like a lot of stuff I was saying about like out of game stuff. Like we'd all get together
Mm-hmm.
and discuss some of those things what we're kind of doing that can be adopted across any game. Where it's
Mm-hmm.
like, we have the players doing this, this, and this, and it's like okay, you know, it's Rocket League, it's Halo, right? But
Mm-hmm.
it's like we're doing all this out of game and still be done for all the rosters, right? So like
Mm-hmm.
kind of positive things that we're all doing across the teams. We want to start doing that. I think probably start next year we're going to do that. So after this SI, so
Yeah.
definitely looking forward to that. We haven't done it yet, but start next year we're going to start it. So,
It'd even be cool to just sit in some of their sessions
yeah,
and see what they do to see if there's any
see what they do.
differences. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
But
Kind of just get to compare and contrast like what they do well, what I could be doing better, things like that. It'd be awesome.
yeah. Well, look, Colin, it's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Honestly, I've been looking forward to this one. I'm so glad we finally had the chance to sit down and talk. So, before we finish up, I'm going to open up the floor to you. If there's anything you want to say to SSG fans, to your own fans, just anything you want to say to the Siege world ahead of the next coming months.
Well, thank you guys for watching. Hopefully that as many of you guys can come out to Brazil, you can, support us there. And, thank you guys for continuing to do what you do and allowing us to do what we do.
Sounds great. Well, I'll definitely be watching. Hopefully, you guys can put on a show. Obviously, a big fan of you. And to the viewers at home, I want to thank you all for watching the show tonight. If you want to keep up to date with everything that's going on, make sure to subscribe. Check out the Twitter. There'll always be updates there. But Callout, you've been a pleasure. Thanks for joining me.
Yep. Thank you for having me.
Thank you.